I never thought I'd be the villain in my own daughter's life story, but here I am, the mother who wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving dinner, the mother who made a phone call that changed everything. Let me tell you how quickly a relationship can unravel when you discover the person your child married isn't who they pretended to be. It's a special kind of heartbreak, watching someone you raised with love and tenderness being slowly diminished by the person who vowed to cherish them. But before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Magnolia Thornbuck, 62 years old, with silver-streaked auburn hair I refuse to fully color because I've earned every last one of those strands. I've spent 40 years building the most successful real estate agency in Mapleridge County, raised 2 daughters on my own after my husband Raymond passed unexpectedly, and somehow managed to keep my sanity through it all. My younger daughter Emma is the reason I'm telling this story. Emma, brilliant, kind-hearted, and unfortunately too forgiving for her own good. The trouble began 3 years ago when Emma brought home Weston Caldwell. He was immaculately dressed, in a tailored suit that I later discovered he'd purchased just for meeting us. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, his handshake firm without being aggressive, and his smile seemed genuine when he said, "Mrs. Thornbuck, Emma speaks so highly of you. It's an honor to finally meet the woman who raised such an extraordinary daughter." I'll admit, I was charmed. What mother wouldn't be? Here was this handsome young financial analyst who looked at my daughter like she hung the moon. He asked thoughtful questions about my business, laughed at my terrible jokes, and by the end of dinner, even my older daughter Olivia, who trusts new people about as much as cats trust water, was won over. "He seems different from the others," Olivia whispered when Emma and Weston stepped outside for some air. "She looks happy, Mom." And she did. Emma practically glowed. After a string of disappointing relationships with men who never quite appreciated her gentle spirit, Weston appeared to be the exception. He remembered her favorite authors, surprised her with small, thoughtful gifts, and never made her feel less than for choosing nonprofit work over a more lucrative career. When they announced their engagement 8 months later, I was genuinely thrilled. At their engagement party, I raised my glass and said, "To finding someone who sees you completely and loves every part." Emma had tears in her eyes, and Weston pulled her close, kissing her temple in a gesture that seemed protective, loving. I should have noticed how his fingers dug slightly into her shoulder, how her smile faltered for just a moment. But we see what we want to see, especially when it comes to our children's happiness. The wedding was everything Emma had dreamed of. Simple but elegant, held in the garden of my historic Victorian home, with fairy lights woven through the old oak trees and wildflower arrangements Emma and I had put together ourselves. When I walked her down the aisle, she had insisted that without her father it could only be me. My heart felt so full I thought it might burst. "You deserve every happiness," I whispered as I placed her hand in Weston's. He smiled at me gratefully, and I really believed I was giving my daughter to a man who would treasure her. The first year of their marriage seemed to confirm my hopes. They purchased a quaint starter home in a neighborhood not far from mine, a fixer-upper with good bones, but in desperate need of updating. I offered to help with the down payment, but Weston politely declined. "We want to do this on our own, Magnolia," he explained. "Build something together, you know. Create our own story." I respected that independence, that desire to forge their own path. What I didn't know then was that 6 months later, when they were struggling with the renovation costs, Weston would approach me privately. "I've been thinking about what you offered," he said, voice lowered though Emma was just in the next room. "About helping with the house. Emma doesn't need to. No, but I'm worried about her stress levels with all these unexpected expenses." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but my concern for Emma overrode my instincts. I agreed to help, not with a gift, but with a private loan. We drew up paperwork, and I became the holder of their mortgage rather than the bank. The arrangement Seemed perfect. They got a better interest rate, I had a solid investment, and Emma could renovate her kitchen without financial strain. "You're a lifesaver, Magnolia," Weston said, shaking my hand after signing the papers. "This stays between us, though. Emma's pride would be hurt if she knew." I should have recognized the first red flag. Secrets from my daughter, but I told myself it was just a man protecting his wife's feelings, not wanting her to worry. I didn't realize I was helping build the foundation for the control he would soon exert over every aspect of her life. The changes were subtle at first. Emma's weekly lunch dates with me became monthly, then sporadic. She stopped wearing the vintage earrings I'd given her from my mother's collection, explaining that Weston thought they looked old-fashioned. She cut her hair, the long chestnut waves she'd loved since childhood, into a short, severe bob because Weston mentioned once that short hair was more professional. When I asked her about these changes, she would smile that increasingly rare smile and say, "Marriage is about compromise, Mom. You taught me that." But I hadn't taught her to disappear. I hadn't taught her to become smaller, quieter, less herself. Then came the dinner party incident, about 18 months after their wedding. I'd invited Emma and Weston, along with Olivia and her husband, Marcus, and a few close friends to celebrate my agency's 40th anniversary. Emma had helped plan it, excitedly discussing menu options and decorations in the weeks leading up. But on the night itself, they arrived an hour late. Emma's eyes were rimmed red, though she insisted it was just allergies. Throughout dinner, Weston dominated the conversation, repeatedly cutting Emma off mid-sentence or contradicting her stories with, "Actually, honey, that's not quite how it happened." After his fourth glass of wine, the charming mask slipped further. When conversation turned to my recent expansion into commercial real estate, Emma mentioned proudly that she'd been the one to suggest the move years ago. Weston laughed. Not the warm chuckle of shared amusement, but something sharper. "Emma in commercial real estate? She can barely negotiate taking clothes to the dry cleaner." He patted her hand condescendingly. "Leave the business talk to your mother, sweetheart." The table fell silent. I saw Olivia's husband, Marcus, the gentlest soul I know, clench his fist around his napkin. Emma stared at her plate, a flush creeping up her neck. "Actually," I said evenly, placing my fork down with deliberate care, "Emma has one of the sharpest business minds I've ever encountered. She simply chose to use her talents helping underserved communities rather than pursuing profit." Weston's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. "Of course, Magnolia. I'm sure she's brilliant at everything she does." After they left, Olivia stayed behind to help clean up. "Something's wrong," she said, loading the dishwasher with more force than necessary. "That's not the Emma we know." "People change after marriage," I said, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. Olivia shook her head. "Not like this. Not into shadows of themselves." I spent that night remembering all the small moments I'd dismissed, Emma checking her phone anxiously when Weston was running late, her declining invitations to family events with vague excuses, the time I dropped by unannounced and found her frantically cleaning an already spotless house because Weston likes things a certain way. The next morning, I called Emma and suggested lunch, just the two of us. To my surprise, she agreed, though she insisted on a restaurant far from their neighborhood or my office. Over salads neither of us ate. I finally asked the question that had been burning in my throat. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" Her eyes filled with tears so quickly it took my breath away. For a moment, I saw my little girl again, the one who would run to me with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting I could fix anything. "It's not that simple, Mom," she whispered, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "Marriage is complicated." "Complicated, yes. Diminishing? No," I said, reaching for her hand. "Talk to me." And finally she did. How Weston criticized everything from her cooking to her choice of friends. How he checked her phone, questioned her whereabouts, controlled their finances. So completely she had to ask for money to buy groceries, despite the fact that her salary from the nonprofit went directly into their joint account. How he would give her the silent treatment for days if she disagreed with him, then shower her with elaborate gifts and tearful apologies afterward. "Sometimes I think I'm going crazy," she confessed. "He'll deny saying cruel things, tell me I'm too sensitive or I misunderstood. And sometimes I believe him because he can be so wonderful, Mom. You've seen it." "That's how it works," I said gently. "If he was terrible all the time, you would have left already." She looked up sharply. "I'm not leaving him. I'm not—" "Suggesting you should," I lied, because I knew pushing would only drive her away. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I just want you to remember who you are. The Emma I raised wouldn't let anyone make her feel small." She squeezed my hand, then checked her watch anxiously. "I have to go. He'll be wondering where I am." 2 weeks later, Emma called to invite me to their home for dinner. "Weston wants to apologize for the dinner party," she explained, a note of hope in her voice. "He feels terrible about how he acted." I accepted, cautiously optimistic. Perhaps my lunch with Emma had made an impact. Perhaps Weston realized he was at risk of damaging his relationship not just with me, but with his wife. The evening started. Pleasantly enough. Their home looked beautiful, the renovations nearly complete, with gleaming hardwood floors and the craftsman details restored to their former glory. Emma had prepared an elaborate meal, and Weston greeted me with a hug and a seemingly heartfelt apology. "I was stressed about work, drinking too much," he explained. "It's no excuse for how I spoke to Emma or you. I'm genuinely sorry, Magnolia." "We all have bad days," I said diplomatically. "Let's move forward." Dinner conversation was carefully light. Gardening plans, a movie they'd enjoyed, Olivia's recent promotion. I noticed Emma still checked Weston's expression before speaking, still laughed a beat too loudly at his jokes, but she seemed more relaxed than she had in months. As we moved to the living room for coffee, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps things were improving. Then Weston cleared his throat and set his cup down with a deliberate clink. "Magnolia, there's something I wanted to discuss with you." Emma's smile froze in place, telling me instantly that whatever was coming, they hadn't discussed it together. "The thing is," Weston continued, "with the renovations nearly complete, we're thinking about our next steps. Starting a family, possibly." Emma's eyes widened slightly. Clearly, this was news to her as well. "But the mortgage payments are making things tight," he continued smoothly. "I was thinking, since you're essentially the bank here, maybe we could renegotiate terms, given that we're family." I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of renegotiation did you have in mind?" "A reduction in the interest rate, or possibly extending the terms to lower the monthly payments." He smiled, all charm and reason. "Possibly even converting some of the loan to a gift, if you're feeling especially generous. Toward your future grandchildren." I glanced at Emma, who was staring at her coffee cup like it contained ancient mysteries. "I wasn't aware you were struggling with the payments, Weston. Your financial reports have all been quite positive." A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "We're not struggling. I'm being proactive, planning for our future. Our future that apparently includes children I haven't agreed to yet," Emma murmured, so quietly I almost missed it. Weston's head snapped toward her. "What was that?" She set her cup down and met his gaze. "Nothing. Just surprised to hear about these plans, that's all." The tension in the room thickened. I stepped in quickly. "I'm afraid renegotiating isn't possible right now, Weston. My own financial commitments are quite fixed with the agency expansion." His jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. "Of course. I understand completely." The evening ended shortly after, with strained smiles and promises to get together again soon. As I hugged Emma goodbye, I whispered, "Call me tomorrow." She nodded, almost imperceptibly. She didn't call the next day, or the day after. When I tried reaching her, my calls went straight to voicemail. I texted Olivia, asking if she'd heard from her sister. She hadn't. After a week of silence, I drove to their house, heart pounding with worry. No one answered the door, but Emma's car was in the driveway. I used the spare key she had given me, for emergencies only, and let myself in. "Emma? It's Mom. Are you here?" The house was immaculate, eerily quiet. I moved through the rooms, calling her name, growing increasingly frantic until I heard a small sound from the master bathroom. I found her sitting on the edge of the tub, staring blankly at the wall. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "He's gone for the weekend," she said dully. "Golfing with clients in Scottsdale." I knelt beside her, taking in her pale face, the dark circles under her eyes. "What happened after I left that night?" "He was furious," she said, voice flat. "Said I humiliated him, undermined him in front of my mother. Said I should have supported his financial plan instead of making that comment about children." She looked at me then, eyes hollow. "He broke my phone, said I didn't need one if I couldn't be trusted to have his back." My blood ran cold. "Did he hurt you?" She shook her head. "Not physically. Never physically. He just—" She gestured vaguely. "He knows exactly what to say to make me feel worthless." I helped her pack a bag, insisted she come stay with me. She agreed, but only until Weston returned. "Just to give us both space to cool down," she insisted. Those 3 days at my house, Emma began to come back to herself bit by bit. She slept late, ate the pancakes I made just the way she liked. Sat in the garden reading books she'd been meaning to get to. She called her old friends, reconnected with Olivia, even laughed, a real laugh that reached her eyes, when my ancient cat Fitzgerald knocked over a vase while chasing a dust mote. On Sunday evening, her face fell as she packed her overnight bag. "He'll have calmed down by now," she said, more to herself than to me. "You don't have to go back," I said quietly. She zipped her bag with finality. "He's my husband, Mom, for better or worse." "The worst part doesn't mean what you think it means," I told her, but she was already heading for the door. The next few months followed a sickening pattern. Emma would withdraw, become unreachable for weeks. Then she would resurface. Sometimes, with Weston's encouragement, "We should visit your mom. It's been too long," when he was in his charming phase, sometimes secretly when he was traveling for work. Each time I saw her, she seemed a little more subdued, a little less my daughter. Then came the email, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, addressed to the entire family. "Dear all, Weston and I are excited to host Thanksgiving this year at our home. We've completed the renovations on the dining room and can't wait to show everyone the results. Please let us know if you can attend and if you're bringing a dish. Love, Emma." I knew immediately that Emma hadn't written it. The formal tone, the lack of personal touches or inside jokes, this was Weston's work. But I responded enthusiastically, offering to bring my mother's famous cranberry relish and to come early to help with preparations. Emma's response came quickly. "That would be lovely, Mom. Come around 10 a.m.? Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and cold. I gathered my contributions: the cranberry relish, a pumpkin pie, and a bottle of Emma's favorite sparkling cider, and drove to their house with a sense of optimism. Perhaps this family gathering was exactly what Emma needed to remember who she was, surrounded by people who truly loved her. The door opened before I could knock. It was Weston, dressed casually in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, smiling. That perfect smile. "Magnolia, happy Thanksgiving." He stepped back to let me in, then paused, his smile faltering as he glanced at the items in my arms. "Oh, there's been a change of plans." Change of plans? I echoed, stepping into the foyer. The house was immaculate as always, but there was no smell of roasting turkey, no sound of Emma puttering in the kitchen. In fact, the house seemed entirely empty. Yes, unfortunately. He at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. Emma's feeling a bit under the weather. Nothing serious, just a migraine. We've decided to keep things very quiet and small today. I frowned, setting my dishes on the entryway table. If she's not feeling well, I should check on her. Where is she? Weston stepped sideways, blocking my path toward the bedroom. She's sleeping right now. Best not to disturb her. Something in his eyes made my skin prickle with alarm. Weston, I'd like to see my daughter. His smile tightened. As I said, she's resting. The thing is, Magnolia, we've actually had to cancel the larger gathering altogether. It's just going to be Emma and me today, having a quiet meal when she wakes up. I stared at him. You're uninviting me from Thanksgiving? After I was specifically asked to come early and help? I know it's disappointing, he said, voice dripping, with false sympathy. But surely you understand. Emma's health comes first. Then let me hear it from her, I insisted. I want Emma to tell me herself that she doesn't want me here. His expression hardened. That won't be possible. And frankly, Magnolia, I think it's best if you leave now. Emma doesn't need the additional stress of a confrontation. This isn't a confrontation, I said evenly. This is a mother concerned about her daughter, who suddenly has a convenient migraine right when family is due to arrive. Weston's charming mask slipped completely then. He stepped closer, voice lowering to a cold, precise tone I'd never heard from him before. Let me be clear. You are not welcome in our home today. Emma and I have discussed this at length, and we both feel you've been overstepping boundaries lately. The constant calls, the surprise visits, the unsolicited advice. It's becoming intrusive. That's not true, I said, heart pounding. Emma has never indicated. Because she's too kind to say it to your face, he interrupted. But believe me, she's exhausted by your neediness, by your refusal to let her have her own life, her own marriage, without your constant interference. Each word landed like a physical blow. Could it be true? Had I misread everything? Was I the problem? All along? No, I knew my daughter, I knew myself. And I knew manipulative tactics when I heard them. I don't believe you, I said simply. And I'm not leaving until I speak with Emma. His face flushed with anger. This is my house. Actually, I cut in, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained. It's technically my house. Or have you forgotten who holds your mortgage? The look he gave me then was pure hatred, stripped of all pretense. Are you threatening me? Not at all, I replied. Just stating a fact. Now, where is my daughter? For a moment, I thought, he might physically remove me from the house. His hands clenched at his sides, his breathing shallow and rapid. Then, from somewhere behind him, came a small voice. Mom! Emma appeared in the hallway, wrapped in a robe, hair disheveled. She looked pale, eyes squinting against the light. She did indeed look like someone suffering from a migraine. But there was something else in her expression. Relief. Emma, sweetheart, you should be resting, Weston said, voice instantly transformed back to gentle concern. I heard voices, she murmured. Mom, I'm sorry about today. I woke up with my head splitting open and… It's fine, honey, I assured her. I just wanted to check on you before I left. Can I get you anything? Some tea, perhaps? Your grandmother's remedy? Before she could answer, Weston stepped between us. I've got… It covered, Magnolia. Thank you for stopping by. But as you can see, Emma needs quiet and rest. Emma's eyes moved from Weston to me, then back again. I saw the moment she made her decision. straightening slightly despite her evident pain. "Actually," she said quietly, "I'd love some of Grandma's remedy. No one makes it like Mom." A flicker of shock crossed Weston's face. Then his eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside with obvious reluctance. "Of course. Whatever will help you feel better." In the kitchen, as I heated water and gathered ginger and honey, Emma sat at the island counter, hands cupped around her temples. "What's going on?" I asked softly, keeping my back to the doorway. "And don't tell me it's just a migraine." She glanced nervously toward the hall. "He canceled Thanksgiving last night," she whispered. "Called everyone except you. Said I wasn't feeling well enough for company." "And are you? Feeling unwell, I mean?" She nodded slightly. "Yes, but—" She hesitated. "It started after we argued about the guest list. About you, specifically." I slid the mug of steaming tea toward her. "Tell me." "He said you were undermining him. That you never approved of our marriage. That you're trying to drive a wedge between us." Her voice cracked. "He said I had to choose, his comfort or your feelings." The pain in her eyes broke my heart. "Oh, Emma. I couldn't do it, Mom. I couldn't call and uninvite you myself. So he said he'd handle it, and then I suddenly felt so sick, so exhausted." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know what's happening to me anymore." I reached across the counter and took her hand. "I do. You're being isolated from everyone who loves you. It's what abusers do." She flinched at the word abuser, but didn't pull away. "He's never hit me." "Abuse isn't always physical," I said gently. "You know that from your work at the shelter." She closed her eyes. "It's different when it's happening to you. You start to believe maybe you deserve it." "You don't," I said firmly. "No one does." A floorboard creaked behind us. We both looked up to see Weston leaning against the door frame, arms crossed. "Feeling any better, sweetheart?" he asked Emma, but his eyes were fixed on me. "A little," she murmured. "Mom's tea helps." "Good," he said brightly, pushing off the doorframe and approaching us. "Because I was thinking, since you're up anyway, maybe your mother could stay for a small Thanksgiving lunch after all. Just the three of us." The abrupt shift in attitude sent warning bells clanging in my head. Emma looked equally startled. "That would be—" she began hesitantly. "Wonderful." I finished for her, smiling at Weston. "How thoughtful of you to suggest it." If he was surprised by my ready agreement, he didn't show it. "Great. I'll start preparing the turkey. Emma, why don't you go rest a bit more while your mother and I handle things?" As soon as Emma left the kitchen, the air between us thickened with unspoken hostility. "Let's be clear," Weston said quietly, pulling vegetables from the refrigerator. "This doesn't change anything. After today, I want you to respect our boundaries." "What boundaries would those be, Weston?" I asked, keeping my voice conversational as I began washing potatoes at the sink. "The ones where you isolate my daughter from her family? Where you break her phone when she says something you don't like? Where you make her believe she's the problem?" His knife paused over an onion. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I think I do," I replied. "I think I understand exactly what's happening in this marriage." He resumed chopping, his movements precise and controlled. "Emma is a grown woman who can make her own choices. If she has issues with our relationship, she's free to address them with me directly." "Is she?" I asked. "Is she really free to do that, Weston?" He set the knife down with deliberate care. "I don't appreciate what you're implying." "And I don't appreciate what you're doing to my daughter," I replied, matching his quiet intensity. But here we are. We worked in tense silence after that, preparing a meal neither of us had any appetite for. When Emma rejoined us, looking marginally better but still subdued, Weston transformed again. Solicitous, gentle, the perfect concerned husband. Throughout our strange, stilted Thanksgiving meal, I watched their interaction with growing clarity. The way Emma waited for Weston's reaction before offering her own opinion. The subtle glances she darted his way before speaking. The nervous laugh that followed any statement that might possibly contradict him. And Weston himself, maintaining perfect control while appearing completely reasonable. Correcting Emma's recollections of events. No, honey, that's not quite how it happened. Making backhanded compliments that masqueraded as concern. You look beautiful today, though still a bit pale. Maybe you should cut back on those late nights at the shelter. By the time we finished dessert, a pumpkin pie Emma barely touched, I'd made my decision. I couldn't force Emma to leave him. I couldn't make her see what was happening if she wasn't ready. But I could ensure she always had an escape route, a safety net, someone in her corner. And perhaps I could give Weston a taste of his own medicine. As I gathered my things to leave, I hugged Emma tightly, whispering in her ear. My door is always open. Day or night. No questions asked. She clung to me for a moment longer than usual, and I felt her slight nod against my shoulder. To Weston, I offered a cool smile and a handshake. Thank you for allowing me to join your Thanksgiving after all. It was illuminating. His grip tightened briefly around my fingers. Always a pleasure, Magnolia. I got into my car and drove exactly 3 blocks away, then pulled over and made a call. Not to Emma, not to Olivia, but to my assistant at the real estate agency. Harold, it's Magnolia. I need you to pull some files for me. The Caldwell mortgage, specifically. And I need you to set up a meeting with my lawyer first thing tomorrow morning. The next day, as promised, I met with my attorney. I explained the situation, laid out my concerns about Emma's well-being, and proposed my plan. Are you sure about this? He asked, reviewing the documents I'd brought. It's legally sound, but it's also likely to escalate tensions considerably. I'm counting on it, I replied. Sometimes things need to get worse before they can get better. That afternoon, I made another call, this time to the bank where I'd registered the mortgage deed. Good afternoon. This is Magnolia Thornbuck. I need to speak with someone in your mortgage department regarding a loan I hold. What happened next would change everything. The following Monday, while Emma was at work and Weston was preparing for a client meeting, a courier arrived at their front door. The envelope was crisp, professional, stamped with my attorney's firm logo in the corner. I'd instructed them to deliver it at precisely 8:30 a.m., when I knew Weston would still be home but rushing to leave. Timing matters when you're dealing with someone who thrives on control. Inside that envelope was a formal notice of mortgage review, stating that due to irregularities in payment history and concerns about property maintenance, I would be conducting a full inspection of the property within 72 hours, as was my legal right as the mortgage holder. It also indicated that following this inspection, terms of the loan might be subject to immediate revision. There was nothing illegal about it. The mortgage agreement Weston had signed contained standard clauses allowing for periodic inspections and reviews. Clauses that people rarely read carefully because they never expect them to be enforced. Clauses that give lenders, in this case me, considerable leverage when necessary. Harold called me the moment the courier confirmed delivery. It's done, Magnolia. Signed for personally by Mr. Caldwell. I was sitting at my kitchen island, nursing my second cup of coffee, staring at the framed photo of Emma and me from her college graduation. Her smile then had been luminous, unguarded. Perfect. Now we wait. I didn't have to wait long. My phone rang 20 minutes later, Weston's number flashing on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my voice deliberately casual. Good morning, Weston. This is unexpected. What the hell is this? No preamble, no pretense of civility, just raw, undisguised anger. I assume you're referring to the mortgage notice, I replied calmly. Is there something about it you don't understand? Irregularities in payment history? That's absurd. Every payment has been on time, to the penny. You know that. Have they? I examined my nails, enjoying the crisp precision of my fresh manicure. I'm looking at my records now, and it seems the October payment was actually 2 days late. A beat of silence. Then, 2 days? 2 days because of a banking error that was immediately corrected. You can't be serious. Banking errors are still errors, Weston. Reliability matters in financial agreements. I paused deliberately. But perhaps I'm being overly cautious. The property inspection will clarify things. There's not going to be an inspection, he snapped. This is harassment, plain and simple. I know exactly what you're doing. Do you? I kept my tone mild, conversational. I'm simply exercising my rights as outlined in Section 14B of our agreement, the very agreement you were so eager to sign when you needed my money. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear him calculating, reassessing, searching for leverage. Emma will be devastated when she hears about this, he finally said, voice lowered to a threatening murmur. When she realizes her own mother is trying to sabotage our home, our marriage. By all means, show her the notice, I replied. In fact, I insist on it. Emma has every right to know about financial matters affecting her home, doesn't she? Unless there's some reason you wouldn't want her fully informed. His breathing changed, became more controlled. The mask was sliding back into place. This is completely unnecessary, Magnolia. If you had concerns about the mortgage, you could have discussed them with me directly, like family. Family, I repeated, letting the word hang between us. Yes, we are that, aren't we? Which is why I'm surprised you'd exclude me from Thanksgiving dinner. Why you'd tell Emma I'm interfering in your marriage. Why you'd break my daughter's phone when she disagreed with you. Silence. Complete, damning silence. The inspection will take place Thursday at 10 a.m., I continued evenly. I expect both you and Emma to be present. We'll discuss the future of your mortgage arrangements then. I have meetings on Thursday. Important client meetings I cannot reschedule. That's unfortunate. If you can't be present, I'll have to conduct the inspection with Emma alone. I'm sure she and I can handle any decisions that need to be made regarding the property. You can't. Actually, I can. It's all there in the agreement. Read it carefully this time, Weston. I paused. Oh, and bring copies of your complete financial records for the past year. Bank statements, investment accounts, credit card statements, everything. Since we're reviewing the mortgage, I'll need to reassess your financial stability. The threat was clear, though never explicitly stated. Financial control was Weston's primary weapon against Emma. If I could undermine that control, create transparency where he demanded secrecy, I might give Emma a chance to see the truth. This conversation is over, he said coldly. Expect to hear from my attorney. I look forward to it. I'm sure he'll find our agreement thoroughly binding. Goodbye, Weston. I hung up and immediately called Olivia. It started, I told her. Be ready for Emma to reach out. My older daughter had been my confidant through this entire ordeal, the only other person who fully understood what was happening to Emma. What if she doesn't? Olivia asked, voicing the fear we both shared. What if he convinces her you're the enemy? Then we move to Plan B, I said, with more confidence than I felt. But let's give Plan A a chance first. Emma called that evening, her voice tight with confusion and hurt. Mom, what's going on? Weston showed me some kind of formal notice about our mortgage. I was prepared for this moment, had rehearsed it carefully. Yes, I sent it. There are some matters we need to discuss regarding the property and loan terms. Nothing to worry about, just standard procedure when a private mortgage has been in place for over 2 years. But why so formal? Why not just talk to us? Sometimes formal is better, sweetheart. Keeps everything transparent and above board. I softened my tone. I'd be happy to explain everything on Thursday during the inspection. You'll be there, won't you? A hesitation. Weston says he can't make it. He wants to reschedule. That's entirely his choice. But the inspection needs to happen this week, and I'd really like you to be there, Emma. This is your home too, your financial future. The line went quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then, very softly, "He's angry, Mom." Really? Angry? My heart clenched. At me, I hope. Not at you. At everything. He keeps saying you're trying to control us, trying to punish him for Thanksgiving. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Is that true? No, I said firmly. This isn't about punishment. It's about making sure everyone is treated fairly, including you, especially you. I don't understand what that means. You will. On Thursday. I gentled my voice. Emma, do you trust me? Another long pause. I don't know who to trust anymore. It wasn't the answer I'd hoped for, but it was honest. And maybe that was the first crack in the facade Weston had built around her. Just be there Thursday. That's all I'm asking. Thursday morning dawned bright and cold, the kind of crystalline December day that makes even the bare trees look beautiful. I dressed with particular care, a tailored charcoal suit that projected authority without intimidation, pearl earrings that had been my mother's, sensible but expensive leather boots, armor of a sort. Harold drove me to Emma's house, a folder of documents tucked under his arm, his expression professionally neutral. Remember, I told him as we pulled into the driveway, no matter what happens in there, your only job is to document. Let me handle the rest. The door opened before we reached it. Emma stood in the entryway, dressed for work in a simple navy dress, her face pale but composed. Mom, Harold, please come in. The house was immaculate as always. Too immaculate, like a model home rather than a place where people actually lived. I noted fresh flowers on the console table, the smell of recently brewed coffee, the carefully arranged throw pillows on the sofa. Emma preparing for inspection, trying to make everything perfect to avoid criticism. I recognized the behavior all too well. The house looks lovely, I said, removing my coat. You've done wonders with it. Emma accepted the compliment with a tight smile. Coffee? I just made a fresh pot. That would be wonderful. Is Weston joining us? I glanced around, already knowing the answer. He had meetings he couldn't reschedule. He sends his apologies. I nodded, unsurprised. Well, that's unfortunate, but we can proceed without him. Harold will document the inspection for the record. We moved through the rooms methodically, Harold taking notes and occasional photographs for the file. I commented on the craftsmanship of the renovations, asked detailed questions about contractors and materials, complimented Emma's design choices. To any outside observer, it would have looked like a standard property inspection. But I was watching Emma. The way she flinched slightly when I opened closet doors. How she hurried ahead to straighten items that needed no straightening. The nervous glances at her phone, which buzzed with text messages every few minutes. In the master bedroom, while Harold was examining the recently replaced windows, I picked up Emma's phone from the nightstand where she'd left it. Someone really wants your attention, I observed, handing it to her. Don't let us keep you from responding. She took the phone reluctantly, glancing at the screen. It's just Weston checking in. 5 times in 20 minutes. He must be very concerned about our inspection. Emma's cheeks flushed. He's in meetings. Just wants to make sure everything's going smoothly. I nodded, then opened the closet door. Emma's clothes hung neatly on one side, organized by color and type. Weston's side was similarly arranged, but took up significantly more space. I ran my hand along the row of his designer suits, noting the labels. These are lovely. Savile Row, Brooks Brothers, Weston has excellent taste. Emma's eyes followed my hand. Yes, he's very particular about his clothes. I can see that. I moved to her side of the closet. Much smaller, much less extravagant. No designer labels. Mostly conservative business attire and casual basics. Your wardrobe seems to have changed since you got married. I remember you used to love color, patterns. That gorgeous red coat you wore everywhere your senior year of college. She glanced down at her plain navy dress. Weston prefers a more classic look. He says it's more professional. For him, perhaps. I kept my voice light. But you always had your own style. It was part of what made you so uniquely Emma. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, perhaps, or longing. But she said nothing. We continued to the office, a masculine space dominated by a large mahogany desk and leather chair. Emma rarely used this room, she explained. It was primarily Weston's domain. Mind if I take a look? I gestured toward the desk. Emma hesitated. Weston keeps work documents there, confidential client information. I'm not interested in his client files, I assured her. Just the desk itself, part of assessing the property improvements. She nodded reluctantly, and I moved behind the desk, running my hand along its polished surface. Beautiful craftsmanship. Quite an investment piece. As I spoke, I casually opened the center drawer. Inside, neatly organized, were office supplies, a checkbook, and a small leather-bound planner. I lifted the planner, flipping it open. Mom! I don't think, Emma began, but stopped as I held up a hand. This is interesting, I said, examining an entry. Wasn't your nonprofit's fundraising gala on the 15th? The one you spent months organizing? Emma nodded, confused. Yes, why? I turned the planner toward her. Because Weston has a dinner, scheduled that evening with someone named Vanessa, at Le Cirque. Her face went perfectly still. That must be a work dinner, a client. On the evening of your most important professional event of the year? I raised an eyebrow. The event you specifically asked him to attend with you? Emma took the planner from my hands, examining the entry herself. Her fingers trembled slightly. This doesn't mean anything. He probably just forgot about the gala when he scheduled this. Perhaps, though it seems odd that a man as meticulous as Weston would make such an oversight. I glanced at the planner again. Especially since your gala is actually noted on the previous page, right here. Emma stared at the entries, brow furrowed. I'm sure there's an explanation. I'm sure there is, I agreed, keeping my tone neutral. The question is whether it's an explanation that respects your work and your marriage. Harold cleared his throat from the doorway. Ms. Thornbuck, if you're ready, we should examine the basement renovations next. I nodded, stepping away from the desk. Of course. Emma, shall we? She replaced the planner exactly as she'd found it and led us downstairs, her movements stiff, her expression clouded. The seeds of doubt had been planted, not just about Weston's fidelity, but about his honesty, his respect for her career, his priorities. The basement inspection was brief and unremarkable. As we returned to the main floor, Emma's phone buzzed again. She checked it, her face paling slightly. Everything all right? I asked. Weston's coming home, she said quietly. His meetings ended early. I glanced at my watch. Perfect timing. We're just about finished here anyway. Emma's eyes widened in alarm. Mom, I think it might be better if you were gone before he arrives. He's not in the best mood. I'm not afraid of Weston's moods, Emma. I set my folder on the dining room table and began spreading out documents. In fact, it's probably best if he's here for this next part. Harold, would you mind waiting in the car? I think this should be a family discussion. Harold nodded, understanding the plan. Of course, I have all the documentation I need for now. Mrs. Caldwell, Thank you for your cooperation today. After he left, Emma turned to me, arms crossed protectively across her chest. What next part? I thought the inspection was the point of this visit. The inspection was just the beginning. Now we need to discuss the terms of your mortgage. Moving forward. I gestured to the documents on the table. Please, sit down. Emma sat reluctantly, her posture tense. I don't understand what's happening, Mom. Why are you doing this? Before I could answer, the front door opened and closed with a decisive bang. Weston strode into the dining room, his expression thunderous beneath a thin veneer of professional composure. He was still wearing his suit from work, his hair perfectly styled, but the muscle twitching in his jaw betrayed his fury. Magnolia, still here, I see. His voice was tightly controlled. Perfect timing, Weston. I was just about to review the mortgage documentation with Emma. I smiled pleasantly. Please join us. This concerns you both. He remained standing, hands in pockets. Whatever you have to say can be directed to my attorney. I informed you on Monday that I'd be seeking legal representation in this matter. You're certainly entitled to do that, but as I haven't received any communication from said attorney, we can proceed as planned today. I turned a document toward Emma. This is the original mortgage agreement you and Weston signed 2 years ago. I'd like you to review Section 14, particularly subsection C. Emma leaned forward, scanning the document with a frown. Private lender reserves the right to modify terms with 30 days' notice in event of... What does this mean, exactly? It means, Weston interrupted, that your mother is threatening to change our mortgage terms unless we comply with whatever ridiculous demand she's cooked up. It's coercion, plain and simple. It's standard language in private lending agreements, I corrected mildly. And I haven't made any demands yet, ridiculous or otherwise. I slid another document across the table. This is what I'm proposing. Emma picked it up, reading slowly. Her eyes widened. You want to put the house in my name? Only my name? Yes. The mortgage would remain in place, but you alone would hold the deed. Weston's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. Absolutely not. This house belongs to both of us. We're married. The mortgage was issued to both of you, I acknowledged. But legally, I have the right to modify that arrangement provided the terms remain financially equivalent. Since Emma's credit score is actually higher than yours, Weston, transferring the deed to her name represents no additional risk to me as a lender. This is about control, he said flatly. You're trying to drive a wedge between us. Turn Emma against me. On the contrary, I'm trying to ensure my daughter is protected, financially and otherwise. I met his gaze steadily. Something that should be a priority for both of us. Protected from what exactly? Her husband? The man who provides for her? Who built this life with her? His voice rose slightly, that careful control beginning to slip. Do you provide for her, Weston, or does she provide for you? I slid a third document across the table. This is a financial analysis of your household income and expenses for the past year, based on the mortgage application records and what Emma has shared with me about her salary. Emma stared at the paper, confusion giving way to shock. This can't be right. It says my income accounts for 62% of our household revenue. That's correct, I confirmed. Your nonprofit salary, plus the annual trust payment from your father's estate, significantly outweighs Weston's income from the investment firm. Weston's face darkened. Those figures are outdated. My bonuses aren't reflected there. Actually, they are, along with your expenses. I tapped another section of the document. Designer suits, monthly golf club dues, weekly business dinners at places like Le Cirque. Quite a lifestyle for someone in a junior position at a regional investment firm. Emma's eyes moved between the document and Weston, bewilderment turning to suspicion. I don't understand. You said we needed to be careful with money. That we couldn't afford a housekeeper, or for me to take that trip to my college roommate's wedding. You said, I said what was necessary to manage our finances responsibly. Weston cut in, his tone softening as he addressed Emma. Sweetheart, your mother is manipulating numbers to create a false narrative. You know how creative accountants can be. There's nothing creative about these figures, Weston. They're drawn directly from your joint bank statements. I turned to Emma. Statements. I'm not convinced you've ever seen, despite contributing the majority of funds to those accounts. Emma's face had gone very pale. Is that true? Have you been keeping our financial records from me? Of course not. Weston moved to stand behind her chair, placing his hands on her shoulders in a gesture that might have seemed supportive to an outside observer. I noticed how his fingers dug slightly into her skin. I handle the day-to-day finances because I have the expertise. You've never expressed interest in reviewing statements or balancing accounts. Because every time I asked about our finances, you told me not to worry my pretty head about it, she said quietly, that it was all under control. And it is. His grip on her shoulders tightened visibly. Your mother is creating problems where none exist. This is about Thanksgiving, about her wounded pride because I dared to set a boundary. I shook my head. This isn't about Thanksgiving, Weston. This is about a pattern of behavior that's been concerning me for quite some time. Financial control, emotional manipulation, isolation from family and friends. That's absurd. He released Emma's shoulders abruptly, stalking to the other side of the table. I've done nothing but support Emma, encourage her career, try to build a life with her. A life where she has no say in financial decisions despite providing most of the income? A life where she has to check with you before spending her own money? A life where her phone mysteriously breaks when she disagrees with you? I kept my voice calm, measured. This wasn't about attacking Weston. It was about helping Emma see the truth. Mom, stop. Emma's voice was strained. This isn't helping. I think it is, I countered gently. I think it's time for complete transparency. About finances, about expectations, about that dinner at Le Cirque scheduled on the night of your gala. Weston went very still. You went through my personal planner? That's private property. I noticed an entry while examining the desk. I turned to Emma. Did you know about this dinner? She shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving Weston's face. Who is Vanessa? A muscle worked in his jaw. A client, an important client who specifically requested that evening. More important than your wife's biggest professional event of the year? Business doesn't run on sentiment, Emma. You know that. His tone was patronizing now, dismissive. Some things take priority. Like your golf weekends? Your $3,000. Suits? The mysterious cash withdrawals that don't seem to align with any household expenses? I tapped the financial summary again. All funded primarily by my daughter's income and my loan. Weston's composure finally shattered. Enough! This stops now. You come into my house. My house, technically, I interjected. At least until the mortgage is paid off. His face flushed dark with anger. You manipulative, interfering. He caught himself, visibly struggling to regain control. Emma, can't you see what she's doing? She's always resented our marriage, always thought you could do better. Now she's trying to poison you against me using financial scare tactics. Emma looked between us, her expression torn. I don't know what to think anymore. Then let me make it simple, I said, pushing the deed transfer document toward her again. Sign this, and the house becomes yours alone. A safety net, nothing more. If your marriage is as solid as Weston claims, it changes nothing practical. You'll continue as you have been, just with additional security. And if she doesn't sign? Weston demanded. What then? You'll raise our interest rates? Call in the loan? Force us out of our home? I would never do that to Emma, I said, evenly. But I am prepared to enforce every condition of our agreement, including quarterly financial reviews and inspections. Complete transparency. The threat was clear. No more financial secrets, no more hidden transactions, no more controlling the narrative. Emma stared at the document, then at Weston, then at me. I could see the wheels turning, years of conditioning, battling against dawning realization. I need time to think, she finally said. This is all too much at once. Of course. I gathered the remaining papers into my folder, leaving only the deed transfer document on the table. Take all the time you need. The offer remains open indefinitely. I stood, collecting my coat from the back of the chair. Weston, I imagine you'd like some privacy to discuss this with Emma. I'll see myself out. His expression was murderous, but carefully contained. This isn't over, Magnolia. No, I agreed. I don't believe it is. I turned to Emma, who remained seated, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd seen her in years. Call me any time, sweetheart, day or night. She nodded mutely, and I felt a pang of guilt. Had I pushed too hard? Too fast? Would this drive her further into Weston's control rather than freeing her from it? The doubt must have shown on my face, because Emma suddenly rose and followed me to the door. Mom, she said quietly, out of Weston's earshot. Did you really do all this because of Thanksgiving? I took her hands in mine, squeezing gently. I did this because I love you, because you deserve to be truly seen and valued, because no one should ever make you feel small, especially not someone who claims to love you. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what happens next. You decide, I told her. For once, you decide. I left then, walking to where Harold waited in the car, my heart hammering in my chest. I had played my hand, revealed the financial manipulation, planted seeds of doubt about Weston's fidelity and priorities, offered Emma a concrete path to greater independence. Now I could only wait and hope that somewhere inside, beneath layers of gaslighting and emotional abuse, my daughter still knew her own worth. What I didn't know as I drove away was that Weston would spend the next 4 hours alternately raging at Emma and pleading with her, using every manipulation tactic in his arsenal to regain control. That he would promise to change, to be more transparent, to attend her next work event, only to revert minutes later to accusations and threats when these promises didn't immediately sway her. I didn't know that when he finally stormed out around midnight, declaring he needed space to process this betrayal, Emma would sit alone in their perfectly decorated living room, surrounded by beautiful things that suddenly felt hollow, and begin to truly see the cage she'd been living in. I didn't know that she would open a drawer in their shared desk, a drawer Weston thought she never accessed, and find bank statements for accounts she didn't know existed, credit card bills for charges she couldn't explain, receipts for jewelry she'd never received, and I certainly didn't know that at 2:17 a.m., as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, worry gnawing at my insides, my doorbell would ring. That I would rush downstairs in my robe to find Emma on my doorstep, a small suitcase at her feet, her face tear-streaked but resolute. You were right, she would say simply, about everything. And as I gathered her into my arms, feeling her body shake with silent sobs against my shoulder, I would know that this wasn't the end of the story, that Weston wouldn't let go easily, that there would be ugly accusations, attempts at reconciliation, perhaps even legal battles ahead. But it was a beginning, the beginning of Emma finding her way back to herself, one painful step at a time. The morning after Emma arrived at my doorstep, I woke early and crept downstairs, careful not to disturb her. She had finally fallen asleep, in the guest room around 4 a.m, emotionally exhausted after hours of tearful revelations. I found Olivia already in my kitchen, methodically measuring coffee grounds into the French press. "I came as soon as I got your text," she said, voice low. "How is she?" "Sleeping finally." I sank into a chair at the kitchen island, suddenly aware of how drained I felt. "It's worse than we thought, Liv." My older daughter's face hardened as she poured hot water over the coffee. "Tell me." I recounted what Emma had discovered. After Weston stormed out, the hidden accounts, the unexplained charges, the jewelry receipts. He's been systematically draining their joint accounts for at least a year, taking her trust fund payments, her salary, and diverting significant portions to accounts only he controls. "That's straightforward financial abuse," Olivia said, her attorney's mind immediately categorizing the offense. "We can use that." "There's more." I accepted the mug of coffee she handed me, wrapping my hands around its warmth. She found hotel receipts, dinner receipts for two at places she's never been, messages on his work phone from someone named Vanessa. Very personal messages. Olivia's expression darkened. "So he's not just controlling and abusive. He's cheating on her too." "It appears that way." I took a sip of coffee, grimacing at its bitterness. Or perhaps that was just the taste of the situation itself. Using Emma's money to fund it, which somehow makes it even worse. My phone buzzed on the counter, Weston's number. "Whatever you think happened, I can explain. I love you more than anything. W." Olivia snorted. Classic non-apology. "Whatever you think happened is particularly charming, like your perceptions can't be trusted." Emma stared at the roses, her expression hardening. "He knows I hate red roses. I've told him a dozen times they remind me of funeral flowers. My favorite flowers are ranunculus and anemones, which he'd know if he ever listened to me." She pushed the vase away. "This isn't about what I like. It's about making the grandest gesture he could think of, as publicly as possible." I felt a surge of pride at her clarity. "What do you want to do with them?" She considered for a moment. "Take them to the nursing home down the street. At least someone should enjoy them." The roses were just the beginning. Throughout the afternoon, deliveries arrived with clockwork regularity. Gourmet chocolates, a designer handbag she'd once admired in a store window, even a jewelry box containing diamond earrings that made Emma laugh bitterly. "Probably bought with my money," she observed, setting the box aside without opening it. By evening, the parade of gifts had stopped, replaced by a new tactic. Weston began calling mutual friends, Emma's colleagues, even distant relatives, expressing concern about her fragile emotional state and her sudden, inexplicable departure. One by one, they called or texted Emma, voices full of confusion and worry. "He's trying to control the narrative," Olivia explained as Emma fielded yet another concerned call. "Make it seem like you're the unstable one. Classic abuser move." Emma ended the call with her bewildered college roommate and set her phone down with a sigh. "I can't keep having this conversation. I don't even know what to tell people." "The truth," I suggested. "As much or as little of it as you're comfortable sharing." "But that's just it. I'm not comfortable sharing any of it." Her voice rose with frustration. "I don't want everyone knowing how completely I was fooled. How I let him control our finances, criticize my clothes, isolate me from friends. I don't want to be pitied." "Then don't give details," Olivia advised. "Just say that your marriage has reached a breaking point and you're taking some time to consider next steps. You don't owe anyone the full story." Emma nodded slowly. "Okay, I can do that." But the respite was brief. Just after 9, as we were clearing dishes from a dinner Emma had barely touched, headlights swept across the front windows. A car door slammed, followed by quick, determined footsteps on the front walk. "It's him," Emma whispered, face draining of color. Olivia was already moving toward the door. "I'll handle this. Mom, Stay with Emma." "No," Emma said suddenly, her voice stronger than it had been all day. "No, I need to do this myself." I studied her face, searching for signs of wavering. "Are you sure?" She nodded, straightening her shoulders. "I'm sure, but—" "Stay close?" "Always," I promised. The doorbell rang, 3 times in rapid succession. Emma took a deep breath and walked to the door, Olivia and I hanging back in the hallway, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving her the space she'd requested. When she opened the door, Weston stood on the threshold, impeccably dressed, as always, but with signs of strain showing around his eyes. His expression cycled rapidly from relief to calculation to a carefully constructed concern. "Emma, thank God." He stepped forward as if to embrace her, but she held up a hand, stopping. "Him. Don't." He froze, then nodded as if her reaction was expected. Understandable. "Okay, I respect that. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes?" Emma hesitated, then stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. My heart raced with anxiety, but I forced myself to respect her choice. Through the window I could see them clearly. Emma standing with her arms crossed, Weston gesturing earnestly, his expression shifting between pleading and intensity. "She's holding her ground," Olivia murmured, watching from beside me. "Look at her posture." Indeed, while Emma looked tense, she wasn't shrinking away or nodding along as she once might have. She was listening, but with a guardedness that was new, protective rather than frightened. After about 5 minutes, Weston's demeanor changed. His gestures became more agitated, his stance more aggressive. He stepped closer to Emma, who immediately backed up a step, maintaining the distance between them. His voice rose just enough that fragments drifted through the window. "Completely unreasonable. After everything I've done for you. Your mother poisoning you against me. That was enough." I moved toward the door, but Olivia caught my arm, pointing. Emma was shaking her head firmly, her own voice rising to match his. "No, Weston, that's not going to work anymore. I saw the accounts. I saw the receipts. I saw the text messages." His face contorted with anger, the mask of concern dropping. "Completely. You had no right. I had every right. It's my home too, my money too, my life." Emma's voice was steadier now, gaining strength with each word. "I'm not coming back. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever." "You don't mean that." His tone shifted again, softening, becoming wounded. "We can work through this. Go to counseling. Start fresh." "There's nothing to work through." She took another step back, her hand finding the doorknob. "Please leave. I'll have my lawyer contact you about next steps." Weston's expression darkened. "Lawyer?" I showed the screen to Olivia, who nodded. "Time to face the music." I answered on the 3rd ring, keeping my voice neutral. "Good morning, Weston." "Where is she?" No greeting, no pretense of civility. His voice was tightly controlled, but vibrating with anger. "Emma is safe." I met Olivia's gaze across the kitchen. "That's all you need to know right now." "Don't play games with me, Magnolia. I know she's with you. Put her on the phone. Now." "I'm afraid that's not possible. Emma is sleeping, and I have no intention of waking her." "She's my wife." His voice rose slightly, that careful control slipping. "You have no right to keep her from me." "I'm not keeping her from anyone. She came here of her own free will, and she'll leave the same way when she's ready." I paused, letting that sink in. "If she wants to talk to you, she knows how to reach you." "This is your doing," he hissed. "You manipulated her, filled her head with lies, turned her against me. This is exactly what you've always wanted." "What I've always wanted is for Emma to be happy and safe, to be valued for who she is, to be loved without conditions or control." I kept my voice steady, refusing to match his emotional pitch. If that's what you want too, then we're on the same side. Don't pretend this is about Emma's welfare. This is about you, your need to control everything, your inability to let go, your pathological jealousy of anyone who takes her attention away from you. The accusation was so perfectly backward, so completely projecting his own behavior onto me, that I almost laughed. Instead, I simply said, I think we both know that's not true. Tell Emma to call me, today, or I'll file a missing persons report. She's a grown woman who left voluntarily after discovering her husband has been lying to her for years. Feel free to explain that to the police. I paused. And while you're at it, you might want to explain the accounts she never knew about, the credit cards you opened in her name, the jewelry you purchased for Vanessa using Emma's trust fund. Money. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, in a voice suddenly soft, almost wounded, she went through my private things? My personal accounts? No, Weston. She went through her accounts, her home, her marriage, and found it all built on lies. He was quiet for so long I thought he might have hung up. Then, with calculated precision, I want to speak to my wife. She owes me that much. Emma doesn't owe you anything at this point, but I'll tell her you called when she wakes up. The decision to respond will be entirely hers. I ended the call before he could reply, setting the phone down on the counter with a shaky hand. Olivia reached across and squeezed my fingers. You handled that perfectly, she assured me. Firm boundaries, no emotional engagement. Exactly what he hates most. He'll escalate, I warned. This was just the opening salvo. Let him. Every action he takes now will only prove Emma's decision was the right one. We spent the next hour quietly preparing for the storm we knew was coming. Olivia, ever the pragmatist, made lists of immediate needs, changing passwords on Emma's accounts, canceling joint credit cards, securing important documents. I focused on practical comforts, fresh towels in the guest bathroom, Emma's favorite tea in the cupboard, space cleared in the closet for her belongings. When Emma finally appeared in the kitchen doorway around 10, she looked smaller somehow, diminished by exhaustion and grief. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her shoulders hunched as if warding off a blow, but there was something else there too, a glimmer of resolve I hadn't seen in years. Weston called, she said before either of us could speak. My phone's been buzzing nonstop since 7. I nodded. He called here too. I told him you'd contact him when and if you wanted to. He's left 17 voicemails. She sank into a chair at the table, clutching her phone like it might bite her. I haven't listened to any of them. You don't have to, Olivia assured her, placing a mug of tea in front of her sister. You don't owe him your time or attention. Right now. Emma stared at the steaming mug. I keep trying to understand how we got here. When exactly everything changed. But the truth is, it didn't change, did it? This is who he always was. I just couldn't or wouldn't see it. That's how it works, I said gently, echoing our conversation from weeks ago. These patterns don't appear overnight. They creep in slowly, disguised as love or protection, or even sensible financial management. I feel so stupid, Emma's voice cracked. All those red flags, all those moments that didn't quite make sense. How could I miss them? Because you're not a suspicious person. Because you believe in people's better natures. Because loving someone means giving them the benefit of the doubt. I moved to sit beside her, covering her cold hand with mine. Those aren't weaknesses, Emma. They're beautiful qualities that someone chose to exploit. She nodded, tears welling again. What do I do now? Olivia slid a legal pad across the table. First, we protect you. Financially, legally, personally. Then we deal with the house, the mortgage, the separation itself. One step at a time. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Emma, despite her emotional state, approached each task with growing determination. She called her bank to freeze joint accounts. She contacted her employer to redirect her upcoming paycheck to a new account Olivia helped her open. She made a list of personal items she needed from the house, practical things like winter clothes and work files, but also sentimental objects, her grandmother's quilt, the small clay sculpture she'd made in college, photos from before Weston. We were discussing when and how to retrieve these items when the doorbell rang. I exchanged glances with Olivia, who immediately moved closer to Emma, protective instinct kicking in. "I'll get it," I said, my tone more confident than I felt. Through the peephole, I saw not Weston, as I'd feared, but a young woman in a delivery uniform holding a massive bouquet of roses, at least 3 dozen, all deep red, arranged with dramatic greenery in an ornate crystal vase. I opened the door, cautiously. "Delivery for Emma Caldwell," the woman announced cheerfully, consulting her clipboard. I accepted the arrangement, which was so heavy I nearly staggered under its weight. "Thank you." In the kitchen, Emma's face fell when she saw the flowers. "Let me guess. Weston?" "There's a card," I said, setting the vase on the counter and extracting the small envelope tucked among the blooms. Emma made no move to take it, so I opened it myself and read aloud. "Emma, I'm sorry for everything. Please come home so we can talk." "You're talking about lawyers now? After less than 24 hours? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This is your mother's doing. She's manipulating you, using you to get back at me because I dared to set boundaries." Emma shook her head, a sad smile touching her lips. "That's the difference between you and her, Weston. She gave me a choice. You never did." With that, she turned and opened the door, stepping back inside. Weston lunged forward, catching the edge of the door before she could close it. "This isn't over, Emma. You're my wife. This is just a tantrum, and when you calm down—" "Good night, Weston." She pushed the door firmly, forcing him to either remove his hand or be hurt. He chose the former, but not before spitting out one final threat. "You'll regret this. When you realize what you've thrown away, when you're all alone with no one but your controlling mother, you'll come crawling back, and I might not be there." The door closed with a decisive click. Emma engaged the deadbolt, then turned to face us, her expression a complex mixture of grief, relief, and determination. "Well," she said, her voice only slightly unsteady, "that's done." I resisted the urge to pull her into my arms, to shield her from the pain I knew she was feeling despite her brave front. Instead, I simply asked, "What do you need right now?" She considered the question, perhaps the first time in years someone had asked what she needed rather than telling her what she should want. "I need a shower, a glass of wine, and then I need to make a plan, because this is only the beginning." She was right about that. Over the next week, Weston cycled through every manipulation tactic in the abuser's handbook. There were more gifts, increasingly expensive and desperate. There were heartfelt emails apologizing for any misunderstandings and promising to do better, carefully worded to admit no actual wrongdoing. There were angry, accusatory messages when the contrite ones went unanswered. When none of these yielded results, he moved on to mutual friends and colleagues again, but with a new narrative. No longer was Emma in a fragile state. Now she was vindictive, unreasonable, turning her back on their marriage over trivial financial disagreements. He called her workplace, expressing concern that she might be too emotionally distraught to handle her responsibilities. Through it all, Emma remained resolute. She retained a divorce attorney, not Olivia, who was too personally involved, but a colleague she trusted. She went to work each day, head held high, addressing concerned inquiries with dignified brevity. She started therapy, recognizing that untangling herself from years of emotional manipulation would take professional support. and she began to reclaim pieces of herself that had gradually disappeared during her marriage. She bought a vibrant blue sweater that Weston would have deemed too attention-seeking. She reconnected with old friends he had subtly pushed away. She laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. 2 weeks after she left, Emma was ready to return to the house to collect more of her belongings. Her attorney had arranged for Weston to be absent during a specified 3-hour window, with a neutral third party present to oversee the process. "I should come with you," I insisted when she told me her plans, "for moral support." She shook, her head, a gentle smile softening her features. "I need to do this myself, Mom, but thank you." "At least take Olivia," I pressed, "in case there are legal issues. The mediator will be there, and Marcus is coming to help with the heavy lifting." Her smile widened slightly. "He's been wanting to punch Weston since that dinner party last year. This is the closest I can let him get." I had to laugh at that. My son-in-law Marcus, despite his imposing physical presence, was the gentlest soul I knew, unless someone threatened his family. "All right, but call me the moment you're done." "I will," she promised. The appointed day dawned clear and cold. Emma left early, dressed in practical jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She seemed calm, focused, but I knew returning to the house would be emotionally challenging. I busied myself with work, trying not to check my phone every 5 minutes for updates. Around noon, just when I expected her to be finishing up, my phone rang, not Emma's number, but one I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Mrs. Thornbuck." A woman's voice, professionally pleasant. "This is Officer Rivera with the Mapleridge Police Department. I'm calling about your daughter, Emma Caldwell." My heart stuttered. "Is she all right? What's happened?" "She's fine," the officer assured me quickly. "But we've had a situation at her residence. Her husband called in a complaint alleging she was removing items that didn't belong to her." "That's absurd," I sputtered. "She was there during an agreed-upon time with a court-appointed mediator collecting her personal belongings." "Yes, we've confirmed that with the mediator. The situation is under control, but Emma asked if you could come to the house. She's quite upset." "I'll be right there," I promised, already reaching for my car keys. The scene that greeted me at Emma and Weston's house was chaotic. 2 police cruisers parked at the curb, neighbors peering curiously from their front yards, and Emma sitting on the front steps, face buried in her hands. Marcus stood nearby, his expression thunderous, deep in conversation with a uniformed officer. I rushed to Emma's side, kneeling in front of her. "Sweetheart, what happened?" She looked up, her face tear-streaked but angry rather than defeated. "Weston showed up halfway through, started claiming I was stealing things that were his. Family heirlooms, expensive electronics. Said I was looting the house while he was gone. But the mediator was documenting everything." She gestured to a professionally dressed woman speaking with another officer. "She has the complete inventory of what I was taking. Nothing. But my clothes, my books, my personal mementos." "Then there's no problem," I assured her. "The police will sort it out. That's not why I'm upset." Emma's voice hardened. After the officers arrived, while they were talking to Marcus and the mediator, Weston pulled me aside. Said if I went through with the divorce, he'd make sure I lost my job. Said he had evidence I'd been embezzling from the nonprofit, that he'd go to the board with it if I didn't come home. Cold rage washed over me. That's a lie, and it's extortion. Of course it's a lie. But he made it sound so convincing, Mom. Said he'd been protecting me by keeping quiet, but that his moral obligation would force him to come forward if we divorced. Her hands trembled. He knows how much my work means to me. Knows it's the one thing I've held on to through everything. "Did you tell the officers what he said?" She nodded. "They said it's a matter for the divorce proceedings, that they're only here about the property dispute. Her voice cracked. He's going to try to destroy everything I've built, just because I finally stood up to him. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, fury building in my chest. We won't let that happen, I promise you that. After nearly an hour of statements and documentation, the police concluded that Emma was within her rights to remove the items she'd packed. Weston, outwardly apologetic but seething beneath the surface, was warned about making false reports. The officers left, the mediator departed, and Emma finished loading her belongings into Marcus's truck with mechanical efficiency. As they prepared to leave, Weston approached one last time, his voice low enough that only Emma and I could hear. You've made your choice, and now you'll live with the consequences. I've already spoken to James on the board. He was very interested to hear about those accounting irregularities. Emma flinched, but held her ground. There are no irregularities, Weston. You know that. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what people believe. His smile was cold, calculated. You should have remembered who helped you get that position in the first place, who made the introductions, smoothed the path. I stepped between them, my patience finally snapping. That's enough. You've made your threats. Now back away before I ask the officers to return. His gaze shifted to me, hatred flashing in his eyes. This is all you're doing, Magnolia. You never thought I was good enough for her, never accepted me into your precious family. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. What I wanted, I said evenly, was for my daughter to be loved without conditions or control. You were incapable of that. The rest is on you. He laughed, a brittle, angry sound. Keep telling yourself that. But remember, when Emma loses everything, when her reputation is in tatters, when she can't get hired anywhere in this town, it will be because you encouraged this foolishness. With that, he turned and stalked back toward the house, slamming the door with theatrical force. Emma released a shaky breath. He's really going to do it. He's going to try to destroy my career. Let him try, I said, guiding her to Marcus's waiting truck. He's underestimating you, and he's certainly underestimating me. On the drive back to my house, Emma was unnaturally quiet, staring out the window as suburbia gave way to the tree-lined streets of my older neighborhood. I didn't push her to talk, knowing she needed time to process the day's events. But as we pulled into my driveway, she finally spoke. I need to get ahead of this, she said, her voice steadier than I expected. Before Weston can spread his lies, I need to speak to the board myself, tell them what's really happening. I nodded, proud of her strategic thinking. That's exactly right. And I need to review all the financial records from the past 3 years. Every transaction, every report I've submitted. If he's planning to claim I've been embezzling, I need ironclad proof that I haven't. Olivia can help with that, I assured her. And I know several forensic accountants who can review everything independently. Emma turned to me, her expression resolute despite the shadows under her eyes. I won't let him take this from me too. My work is the one thing that's truly mine, that I never compromised on, even when I was bending myself into knots to please him in every other way. You won't have to face this alone, I promised. Whatever he throws at you, we'll counter it. Together. What I didn't tell her then, what I wasn't yet certain would work, was the plan already forming in my mind. A plan that would not only protect Emma from Weston's vindictive attacks, but turn his own tactics against him. A plan that would require careful timing, strategic thinking, and perhaps a touch of the ruthlessness he'd accused me of. Because Weston had made one critical mistake in his campaign against my daughter. He'd forgotten who held the mortgage on his house. He'd forgotten that financial leverage could work both ways. He'd forgotten, in his arrogant certainty, that I hadn't yet played my final card, and I was more than ready to remind him. The next morning, I called Harold into my office before the Rest of the staff arrived. He'd been my right hand at the agency for over 15 years, the only person besides my daughters who truly understood how I operated. I need everything we have on Weston's finances, I told him without preamble. Credit history, employment verification, background checks, everything from when they applied for the mortgage, plus anything more recent you can find. Harold nodded, no questions asked. I'll pull the files immediately. Anything specific? You're looking for? Inconsistencies, discrepancies between what he reported to us and what Emma has discovered. Anything that might indicate financial impropriety beyond their personal accounts. You think he's been up to something at work too, Harold observed, already making notes. I think a man who systematically deceives his wife about finances, who creates hidden accounts and diverts her money, doesn't suddenly become ethical and transparent in his professional life. I leaned back in my chair, tapping a pen against my desk. Especially not in investment management, where he has access to other people's money. Harold paused, glancing up from his notepad. That's a serious accusation, Magnolia. If you're right. If I'm right, we may have leverage beyond just the mortgage. I met his gaze steadily. And if I'm wrong, no harm done. We've simply conducted due diligence on a borrower who's showing signs of financial instability. I'll be discreet, he promised, heading for the door. One more thing, I called after him. Contact our friends at Meridian Bank. See if they've had any interactions with Weston or his firm recently. Any client complaints, irregularities, concerns? Harold's eyebrows rose slightly. Meridian was the primary financial institution used by Emma's nonprofit, but he simply nodded and left to begin his investigation. Back at home, Emma was already in motion by the time I returned that evening. She'd set up a makeshift office in my dining room, laptop open, documents spread across the polished mahogany table that had hosted countless family dinners. Olivia sat beside her, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed what appeared to be financial statements. How's it going? I asked, setting down my briefcase and joining them. We've gone through 3 years of financial records for the youth program Emma manages, Olivia reported. Everything is meticulously documented. There's absolutely nothing that could remotely suggest misappropriation of funds. Emma looked up, her expression grim but determined. But that might not matter if Weston can plant seeds of doubt with the right people. James Harrington, the board member he mentioned yesterday, he's an old golf buddy of Weston's. They've known each other since college. I frowned, absorbing this new information. Has James been in touch? Not yet, but I checked my work email an hour ago, and there's a message from the board chair requesting a meeting tomorrow. She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I remembered from her childhood. It could be routine, but the timing. It's not a coincidence, Olivia stated flatly. Weston's already making moves. I set my hand on Emma's shoulder, feeling the tension there. What's your plan? Full transparency. I'm bringing complete financial records, documentation of all major decisions, contemporaneous notes from meetings, and... She hesitated, looking suddenly vulnerable. I'm going to tell them the truth about why I left my marriage. Not every detail, but enough so they understand what Weston is trying to do. Are you comfortable with that? I asked gently. She sighed. No, but I can't fight shadows and whispers. If I don't define the narrative, Weston will. Pride swelled in my chest at her clarity, her courage. You're absolutely right. Olivia began gathering documents into organized stacks. I've drafted a brief statement explaining the situation. Professional, factual, no excessive emotion. You can review it before tomorrow. And I've made calls to several board members I know personally, I added. Not about this specifically, but just to reinforce connections. Emma raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. Relationships matter in small communities like ours. I've lived here 40 years, built my business here, supported every major charitable initiative. Weston may have his golf buddy, but you have decades of goodwill and trust on your side. My phone rang, interrupting our strategy session. Harold's number flashed on the screen. "Excuse me," I said, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. "Harold, what have you found?" "You were right to be suspicious," he said without preamble, his voice low and urgent. "There are significant discrepancies between the financial information Weston provided for the mortgage application and what we're seeing in more recent records." My pulse quickened. What kind of discrepancies? For starters, he claimed a base salary nearly 30% higher than what's reflected in the verified employment documentation. He also listed substantial investment income that doesn't appear in any of the tax returns or bank statements we have on file. Could that be explained by market fluctuations? Bad investments? Possibly, but there's more. I spoke with my contact at Meridian as you suggested. She couldn't give specifics, of course, but she confirmed there's an ongoing internal review involving Weston's firm, with particular focus on accounts he personally manages. I leaned against the counter, mind racing. An internal review could mean anything. True, but she used the phrase irregularities in client accounts and mentioned that several high-net-worth customers have raised concerns about discrepancies in their quarterly statements. A cold certainty settled in my stomach. He's been stealing from clients. "We can't prove that," Harold cautioned, "but the circumstances are certainly suspicious. And there's one other thing. A former colleague of Weston's recently filed a whistleblower complaint with the SEC. It hasn't become public yet, but my contact at Meridian heard about it through industry channels." "Did she know what the complaint alleged?" "No details, but apparently it involves multiple clients and significant sums." I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. This changes things. We need to be extremely careful how we proceed. If Weston is already under scrutiny for financial misconduct, it makes his threats against Emma even more dangerous, Harold finished. He's looking for a scapegoat, and she's convenient. Or he needs money to cover his tracks, and he thinks he can pressure her into providing it. I glanced toward the dining room where Emma and Olivia were still huddled over documents. "Keep digging, Harold, and contact our attorney first thing tomorrow. I need to know exactly where we stand legally with the mortgage given these new developments." "Will do. And Magnolia, be careful. If he's desperate enough to threaten Emma's reputation, there's no telling what else he might do." I ended the call and stood motionless in the kitchen, processing what I'd just learned. Weston wasn't just a controlling husband or a cheating spouse. He was potentially a criminal, using his professional position to defraud clients, and now threatening to destroy Emma's reputation to save himself. The rage that bubbled up was unlike anything I'd felt before. Cold, focused, clarifying. This wasn't just about protecting my daughter anymore. This was about justice. I returned to the dining room with my features carefully composed. Emma looked up expectantly. "Everything okay, Mom? You were gone a while." "Just a work issue," I lied smoothly. I needed more information before burdening her with these new suspicions. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. Now, let's review that statement Olivia drafted." The next morning, Emma dressed for her fee. Board meeting with deliberate care, a structured navy blazer, crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry. Professional, capable, unimpeachable. I watched her prepare, reminded suddenly of her first day of kindergarten, that same serious expression as she'd carefully packed her backpack, determined to do everything right. "You look perfect," I assured her, adjusting her collar slightly. "Remember, you have nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of." She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "I know. I just hate that this is necessary at all, that my personal life is colliding with my professional one in this ugly way. Weston created the situation, not you. And you're handling it with grace and integrity. I squeezed her hand. Call me the moment the meeting ends, no matter the outcome. After she left, I drove to my office and closeted myself with Harold and our attorney, Victoria Chen, a sharp-minded woman who'd helped structure complex real estate deals for my agency for over a decade. Based on what Harold's discovered, we have several options, Victoria explained, reviewing the documents spread across my conference table. The mortgage agreement contains a material misrepresentation clause that's quite robust. If Weston provided false financial information, which appears to be the case, you have grounds to accelerate the loan. Meaning demand immediate repayment in full, Harold clarified unnecessarily. I nodded, following the implications. Which he obviously can't provide, especially if he's in financial trouble. Exactly, Victoria continued. That gives you significant leverage. However, there are complications. Emma is co-signatory on the mortgage, and accelerating the loan could negatively impact her credit as well. That's not acceptable, I said immediately. Emma can't suffer any additional consequences from Weston's actions. Victoria tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. There might be a way around that. The deed transfer document you had Emma review, did she ever sign it? No. We were interrupted by Weston's return, and then events escalated. If she were to sign it now, transferring the house solely into her name, and if you were to simultaneously modify the mortgage to remove Weston as a borrower, that would isolate him from the property entirely. Can we do that without his consent? I asked, skeptical. Normally, no. But given the material misrepresentations in his original application, we have grounds to argue that the contract is voidable. It's not straightforward, and he could certainly challenge it in court, but it creates a strong negotiating position. Harold leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting, Victoria? Her smile was precise, professional, yet somehow predatory. I'm suggesting that Magnolia use the threat of loan acceleration and potential fraud reports to negotiate Weston's complete withdrawal from both the property and Emma's life. Blackmail, I stated bluntly. I prefer to call it leveraged negotiation, Victoria replied, unfazed. And given what he's threatening to do to Emma, I'd say it's proportionate. I considered the strategy, turning it over in my mind like a complex puzzle. If there's already a whistleblower complaint with the SEC, if his firm is already conducting an internal review, additional scrutiny from us could be the tipping point that brings everything crashing down around him. Precisely, Victoria agreed. People like Weston rely on maintaining appearances. Once one thread comes loose, the entire facade can unravel remarkably quickly. My phone rang. Emma. I excused myself to take the call in my private office. How did it go? I asked without preamble. Her exhale was shaky but relieved. Better than I expected. I presented everything up front, the financial records, the documentation of all major decisions, and yes, the personal situation with Weston. And most of the board was completely supportive. They've known me for years, trusted my work. The chair actually apologized for putting me through the meeting at all, said they were obligated to follow up on any allegation, no matter how dubious the source. James Harrington? He tried to raise concerns about some specific transactions, but I had documentation for everything. When he couldn't make anything stick, he switched to insinuating I was emotionally unstable because of my marital problems. Her voice hardened. That didn't go over well with the 3 women on the board, let me tell you. So you're in the clear? For now, the chair called for a formal vote of confidence, which passed unanimously. Even James had to go along once. He saw which way the wind was blowing. They've also agreed to hire an independent auditor to review the program finances, which I actually suggested myself. I have nothing to hide. Pride swelled in my chest. You handled it perfectly. There's one more thing. She paused. After the meeting, Lisa Kwan, You remember her, she's the board treasurer, pulled me aside. She asked if Weston had ever mentioned anything about problems at his firm, said her husband works at Meridian Bank and there are rumors. My pulse quickened. What did you tell her? The truth, that Weston kept his work life separate from our home life, that I knew very little about his clients or accounts. Was I supposed to say something else? No, you were absolutely right to maintain distance. I chose my next words carefully. Emma, there may be more to Weston's situation than we initially realized. I'm still gathering information, but it appears he might be under scrutiny for financial improprieties at work. Silence on the line, then a soft, "Oh." It would explain the urgency of his threats against you, the desperation to control the narrative. If he's already facing professional difficulties, the last thing he needs is a messy divorce raising. Additional questions about his character and judgment. You think he's been stealing from clients? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't have proof of that. But Harold has found significant discrepancies in Weston's financial disclosures, and there are indications of an internal review at his firm. Another long pause. That's why he's been so desperate for me to come back. Not because he loves me or misses me, but because he needs everything to appear normal while he's under investigation. It seems likely, I acknowledged gently. I'm sorry, Emma. Don't be. Her tone sharpened. It actually helps, in a strange way. Makes it clearer than ever that leaving was the right choice. She took an audible breath. What happens now? Now you focus on your work, on healing, on rebuilding. Let me handle Weston. Mom, trust me, Emma. I have a plan that will end his threats once and for all. After ending the call, I returned to the conference room where Victoria and Harold were still reviewing documents. We proceed with the leverage strategy, I announced. Draft whatever legal notices are needed to begin the process of accelerating the loan based on material misrepresentation. Victoria nodded, gathering her papers. I'll have preliminary documentation ready by tomorrow. We should also prepare for his likely countermoves, accusations of harassment, claims that you're using financial pressure to interfere in his marriage, that sort of thing. Let him try, I said dismissively. The facts are on our side. As Victoria departed to prepare the necessary paperwork, Harold lingered, his expression troubled. Are you sure about this approach, Magnolia? It could get ugly fast. It's already ugly, Harold. Weston made it ugly the moment he threatened Emma's reputation to save his own skin. I met his concerned gaze steadily. I'm not doing this out of vengeance. I'm doing it because it's the only language Weston understands, power and control. If we want him to back off permanently, we need to speak in terms he recognizes. Harold nodded reluctantly. Just be careful. Men like him can be unpredictable when cornered. His warning proved prophetic sooner than either of us anticipated. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw not Weston as I half expected, but a uniformed police officer. I opened the door cautiously. Can I help you, officer? Magnolia Thornbuck? The young officer asked, consulting his notepad. Yes, that's me. I'm Officer Ramirez with the Mapleridge Police Department. We received a report of possible elder abuse that I'm following up on. For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. Elder abuse? I don't understand. May I come in, ma'am? I just have a few questions. I stepped back, allowing him into the foyer, mind racing to make sense of this bizarre development. Who made this report? I'm not at liberty to say, but the concern relates to your daughter, Emma Caldwell, who I understand is currently residing here. Realization dawned with a cold clarity. My son-in-law made this report, didn't he? Officer Ramirez maintained a neutral expression. As I said, I can't disclose that information. Is your daughter at home? She's working late tonight. I crossed my arms, anger building beneath my carefully maintained composure. Let me be absolutely clear, officer. I am 62 years old, in excellent health, of sound mind, and the owner of the most successful real estate agency in this county. I am not vulnerable, not incapacitated, and certainly not being abused by my daughter, who is staying with me temporarily while separating from her controlling husband. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I'm required to follow up on all reports. The specific allegation is that Mrs. Caldwell has been financially exploiting you, possibly manipulating you into making changes to property ownership or financial arrangements under duress. I laughed outright at the absurdity of it. That's rich, considering I'm the one who holds the mortgage on their house. If anyone is in a position of financial power here, it's me, not Emma. That may well be the case, but I still need to complete my report. He glanced around the immaculate foyer. Would you mind if I had a look around? Just to confirm living? Conditions are appropriate. I mind very much, I replied firmly. Unless you have a warrant, you have no right to inspect my private home. I'm happy to answer questions, provide documentation of my mental and physical health, or have my attorney present for a more formal interview. But this fishing expedition ends now. Officer Ramirez considered my response, then nodded slightly. That's your right, Mrs. Thornbuck. Would you be willing to answer a few questions here in the foyer? Certainly. I gestured to the small bench by the coat rack. Please have a seat. The next 20 minutes were an exercise in absurdity, as I patiently answered questions about my medical history, financial arrangements, and relationship with Emma. The officer was professional but clearly uncomfortable, especially when I produced documentation of my recent physical examination, my business credentials, and the mortgage agreement for Emma and Weston's house. As you can see, I concluded, the narrative that my daughter is somehow taking advantage of me is not just false but ludicrously backward. In reality, she's seeking refuge from a husband who has financially and emotionally abused her for years. Officer Ramirez closed his notebook. Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Thornbuck. Based on our conversation, I don't see any cause for further investigation. I appreciate your thoroughness, I said, walking him to the door. And officer, when you file your report, please, make note that this appears to be a malicious false claim intended to harass and intimidate a domestic abuse victim. My attorney will be requesting a copy of the report tomorrow. After he left, I leaned against the closed door, anger and disbelief warring in my chest. So this was Weston's next move, painting Emma as an opportunist taking advantage of her elderly mother. It was both despicable and desperate, a clear sign that he was running out of options. I called Victoria immediately, explaining what had just occurred. This actually works in our favor, she pointed out after listening to my account. It demonstrates Weston's willingness to make false reports to authorities, which strengthens our position. We'll request copies of both police reports, this one and the property dispute from last week, to document his pattern of harassment. Should we wait to serve him with the loan acceleration notice? I asked, still unsettled by the escalation. On the contrary, his actions suggest increasing desperation. The more pressure he feels, the more likely he is to make mistakes. I'd recommend proceeding as planned. After ending the call, I poured myself a generous glass of Merlot and sank into my favorite armchair, trying to process the day's events. Elder abuse. The sheer audacity of the accusation was almost impressive in its shamelessness. When Emma returned home an hour later, I debated whether to tell her about the police visit. She looked tired but satisfied, having thrown herself into work as a way to maintain normalcy amid the chaos of her personal life. Good day? I asked as she dropped her bag and kicked off her sensible heels. Productive. The independent audit is already underway, and everyone's being incredibly supportive. She collapsed onto the sofa opposite me. Even James Harrington made a point of stopping by my office to say he was glad we cleared everything up, his way of backpedaling without actually apologizing. I nodded, studying her face. She seemed stronger today, more like herself. But would this newest attack from Weston set her back? Or would it only reinforce her resolve? Emma, there's something you should know, I began cautiously. Weston made another move today. Her expression immediately tensed. What now? I explained about the police visit and the elder abuse allegation, watching her face cycle through shock to disbelief to a cold, hard anger I'd rarely seen in my gentle daughter. That's low, even for him, she said when I finished. Using the authorities to harass us, wasting police resources that should be going to people in actual danger. It was handled. The officer clearly realized it was a baseless claim. Emma shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her. I can't believe I ever thought he was a good man. That I defended him to friends who saw red flags I was too blinded by love to notice. Abusers are expert manipulators, Emma. They show you exactly what you want to see until you're too entangled to easily escape. She was quiet for a moment, twisting her wedding ring, which she still hadn't removed, around her finger. You said you have a plan to end his threats. What exactly are you going to do? I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Emma had been through so much already, and I'd been trying to shield her from the uglier aspects of dealing with Weston. But perhaps that approach was misguided. Perhaps what she needed now was complete transparency, the very thing Weston had systematically denied her. We found evidence that Weston materially misrepresented his financial situation when applying for the mortgage, I explained. That constitutes fraud, and it gives me grounds to accelerate the loan, demand immediate full repayment. Emma's eyes widened. He can't possibly have that kind of money right now, especially if he's having professional problems. Exactly, which gives us leverage to negotiate a comprehensive settlement. The house transferred solely to your name, Weston removed from the mortgage, and most importantly, a legally binding agreement that he will cease all attempts to damage your reputation or interfere with your career. Blackmail, she said, echoing my earlier assessment. Leveraged negotiation, I corrected, borrowing Victoria's euphemism. Using the tools at our disposal to protect you from further harm. Emma was silent, processing the strategy. Finally, she looked up, her expression resolute. Do it. Whatever it takes to end this nightmare so I can start rebuilding my life. Are you sure? It could get messier before it gets better. I'm sure. She twisted the wedding ring off her finger and set it decisively on the coffee table between us. Weston has shown exactly who he is and what he's willing to do. I'm done hoping for decency or fairness from him. It's time to fight fire with fire. The determination in her voice both heartened and concerned me. This was a different Emma than the one who had arrived on my doorstep 3 weeks ago. Stronger, certainly, but also harder. Weston's betrayal had changed her in ways that might never fully heal. All right, I agreed. Tomorrow morning, Victoria will serve him with the formal notice of loan acceleration based on fraudulent application. That's when the real negotiation begins. Little did I know that Weston, already cornered and desperate, had one final devastating card to play. A move so callous and calculated that it would test the limits of both Emma's resilience and my own carefully controlled rage. The board of Emma's nonprofit received an anonymous package the next morning, delivered by courier before the office officially opened. Inside were doctored financial documents, carefully altered emails, and a letter detailing alleged misappropriation of funds for personal expenses shared with her mother, Magnolia Thornbuck. By the time Emma arrived at work, the damage was already spreading like wildfire. The call came at 8:47 a.m. I was in my office reviewing the loan acceleration documents Victoria had prepared when Emma's name flashed on my phone screen. Mom. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. Something's happened. What is it? I was already reaching for my car keys. Someone sent forged financial documents to the board. They make it look like I've been diverting nonprofit funds to personal accounts. Accounts supposedly shared with you. She took a shuddering breath. There are altered emails, doctored bank statements, everything. Ice flooded my veins. Where? Are you now? In my car, in the parking lot. The board chair called me before I even got inside. They're having an emergency meeting at 9. Don't move, I'm coming to you. Mom, you can't. This involves me too now, I cut in. He's dragging both of us through the mud. I'm not letting you face this alone. 20 minutes later, I strode through the nonprofit's modest reception area, ignoring the startled receptionist who half rose from her desk with a questioning, "Ma'am?" I found Emma in the small conference room, surrounded by board members in various states of consternation. The documents were spread across the table, professional-looking spreadsheets, printed emails, bank statements. A masterpiece of deception. Mrs. Thornbuck, the board chair, Eleanor Bishop, looked up in surprise. This is a closed meeting. Since these allegations directly involve me, I believe I have a right to be present, I replied, my voice steely, calm as I moved to stand beside Emma. I squeezed her shoulder gently before addressing the room. I understand someone has accused my daughter and me of financial misconduct. Anonymous allegations, Eleanor clarified, but concerning enough to warrant immediate investigation. May I? I gestured to the documents. Eleanor nodded, and I began examining them with a practiced eye. The alterations were clever but detectable. Inconsistent fonts in the bank statements, slightly misaligned text in the emails. Someone had put considerable effort into creating this fiction. These are forgeries, I stated flatly, looking up at the assembled board members. Sophisticated ones, but forgeries nonetheless. I've never shared accounts with Emma's program, never received funds from this organization in any capacity. James Harrington, Weston's golf buddy, cleared his throat. With all due respect, Mrs. Thornbuck, you would say that regardless of the truth. Perhaps I would, I acknowledged, but the bank won't lie. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. Harold, I need you to contact our representatives at First National and Meridian immediately. Have them send verification of all accounts under my name or Emma's for the past 3 years, including any joint accounts. I need them within the hour, sent directly to Eleanor Bishop at Mapleridge Community Support Network. I provided Eleanor's email address, then ended the call and faced the board again. The actual records will show no such accounts exist, no such transfers occurred. But I suspect you already know who created these forgeries. Eleanor glanced at Emma, then back to me. There was a letter accompanying the documents. It doesn't name anyone specifically, but it suggests Mrs. Caldwell has been under undue influence from her husband in managing program finances. Emma's head snapped up. Weston is claiming he influenced me to misappropriate funds? She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. That's a complete inversion of reality. I placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. It's a classic Darvo technique. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Weston isn't just trying to damage Emma's reputation now. He's setting her up as a fall person for his own financial misconduct. That's a serious accusation, Eleanor observed. I have evidence to support it, I replied. My attorney is currently preparing documentation of Weston's financial misrepresentations, including his mortgage application fraud. There's also an ongoing internal review at his firm regarding client account irregularities. A murmur ran through the board members. Lisa Kwan, the treasurer who had previously warned Emma about rumors at Weston's firm, leaned forward. I've heard similar concerns through banking circles. This situation may be more complex than it initially appeared. Eleanor nodded slowly. While we await verification from the banks, I think it's only fair to mention that these allegations seemed suspicious from the outset. We've worked with Emma for 5 years. Her financial management has been impeccable, transparent, and regularly audited. The timing of these accusations, coming immediately after she stood her ground yesterday, strikes me as retaliatory rather than legitimate. Relief washed over Emma's face. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Don't thank me for basic decency, Eleanor replied firmly, but understand that we still need to investigate thoroughly, if only to completely clear your name. Of course, Emma agreed. I welcome any level of scrutiny. As the meeting adjourned to await the bank verifications, Emma and I stepped outside into the crisp December air. Her hands were shaking, whether from anger or leftover fear, I couldn't tell. How did you know to come so prepared? She asked. About the Darvo thing? About having Harold contact the banks immediately? Because I understand how men like Weston operate when cornered, I replied. They escalate, they project, they try to create so much chaos that everyone loses sight of their original transgressions. I took her cold hands in mine. The loan acceleration notice was delivered to your house an hour ago. This is his desperate countermove. Emma nodded slowly. What happens next? Now we end this, once and for all. I made the call I'd been contemplating since discovering Weston's professional improprieties. Not to Victoria, not to Harold, but to Maxwell Jensen, the SEC enforcement attorney I'd known since our college days at NYU. By early afternoon, Emma's name had been fully cleared. The bank verifications showed exactly what I'd predicted. No shared accounts, no misappropriated funds, no financial impropriety of any kind. The board issued a formal statement of confidence in her leadership, and the independent audit was expanded specifically to document the falsity of the anonymous allegations. That might have been victory enough, but I had learned through painful experience that men like Weston don't stop until they're forced to stop. Half measures wouldn't suffice. At 4:30 p.m., I sat in my car outside Weston's office building, watching the steady stream of employees leaving for the day. My phone rang. Victoria. It's done, she reported. SEC enforcement officers arrived about 20 minutes ago with subpoenas for Weston's files and devices. They're also seizing records from the firm's servers. Any resistance? None, apparently. The managing partners have suspected issues with his accounts for some time. They're fully cooperating to limit their own exposure. I exhaled slowly. And the other matter? Judge Wilson signed the emergency injunction. Weston is legally barred from contacting Emma, entering your property, or making any statements about either of you to employers, colleagues, or financial institutions. The restraining order should be served within the hour. Thank you, Victoria. I ended the call and continued watching the building entrance. At 4:47, Weston emerged, walking quickly, collar turned up against the cold. Even from a distance, I could see the rigid set of his shoulders, the barely contained panic in his movements. I stepped out of my car and called his name. He froze, then turned slowly to face me. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other. Across the sidewalk, two adversaries weighing their final moves. You, he finally said, voice low and venomous. You did this. No, Weston. You did this. Every bit of it. From the first lie on your mortgage application to the forged documents you sent to Emma's board this morning. His eyes widened slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Save it for the SEC investigators. I'm sure they'll be fascinated by your creative accounting methods. I took a step closer. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back when you threatened my daughter? That I'd stand by while you tried to destroy everything she's worked for? Something ugly twisted his features. She destroyed our marriage, our life, everything I built, everything you built on lies, I interrupted coldly. On her money, her trust, her goodness. And when she finally saw you for what you are, you couldn't stand it, couldn't stand losing control. You turned her against me, he hissed. You never thought I was good enough, never accepted me as family. Family doesn't steal from family, Weston, doesn't manipulate, doesn't threaten, doesn't forge documents to ruin someone's career. I held his gaze steadily. I gave you every chance to be the man Emma deserved. You chose to be something else entirely. His hand clenched at his side. You think you've won? This isn't over. I'll fight the SEC accusations. I'll contest the loan acceleration. I'll take that house if it's the last thing I do. You've already lost the house, I cut in. Judge Wilson signed the emergency deed transfer this afternoon. It's solely in Emma's name now, with a restructured mortgage that removes you completely. You have no legal claim to it anymore. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. Not when there's clear evidence of fraud in the original application. Not when the lender, that would be me, has documentation of your financial misrepresentations. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. It's over, Weston. The SEC is combing through your client accounts as we speak. The restraining order bars you from contacting Emma or making any further false claims about her. The house is hers alone. You've lost everything. For an instant, raw fury flashed in his eyes, and I tensed, wondering if he might lash out physically. Then, just as quickly, the fight seemed to drain out of him. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw past the polished exterior to the hollow core beneath. What do you want from me? He asked hoarsely. I want you to disappear from Emma's life, completely and permanently. Sign the divorce. Papers Victoria will send tomorrow. Make no further attempts to contact Emma or damage her reputation. Move away from Mapleridge. Start over somewhere else. I held his gaze. Do that, and I won't pursue criminal charges for the mortgage fraud. I won't submit an official investor complaint to supplement the SEC investigation. I'll remain neutral, rather than actively working to ensure you never work in finance again. He stared at me, calculation warring with defeat in his eyes. And if I don't? Then I will use every resource, every connection, every ounce of influence I've built over 40 years to make sure you face the maximum consequences for your actions. I smiled thinly. The choice is yours, but I recommend choosing wisely. You're already facing serious professional repercussions. Don't add personal legal battles you cannot win. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb beside us. A man in a suit emerged, holding an official-looking envelope. Weston Caldwell. Weston's gaze flicked from the man to me, understanding, dawning. The restraining order. I nodded. Like I said, it's over. I watched as he accepted the envelope with shaking hands, as the process server explained the terms, as the final threads of his carefully constructed life unraveled before my eyes. I felt no triumph, no vindictive pleasure, only a profound relief that Emma would now be truly free of his toxic influence. As Weston walked away, shoulders hunched against the winter wind, I returned to my car and called Emma. It's done, I told her simply. Her exhale was audible, years of tension releasing in a single breath. Thank you, Mom. Come home when you're ready. We'll open that special bottle of Cabernet I've been saving. That evening, as we sat before the fireplace in my living room, glasses of rich red wine in hand, Emma finally asked the question that had been hovering between us for weeks. Why didn't you tell me? About Weston, about your suspicions. You saw what he was long before I did. I considered my answer carefully. Because you weren't ready to hear it. Because love, even misplaced love, creates its own reality. You needed to discover the truth in your own time, in your own way. She nodded slowly. I was so blind. No, you were hopeful, trusting. Those aren't flaws, Emma. They're beautiful qualities that someone chose to exploit. I'm not sure I'll ever trust my judgment again, she admitted softly. How do I move forward after this? One day at a time. You rebuild your confidence by making small decisions, then larger ones. You surround yourself with people who value your voice, your opinions, your boundaries. And gradually, the Emma who's always been there, strong, capable, compassionate, emerges again. She smiled faintly. You make it sound simple. Not simple, but possible. I clinked my glass against hers. And you won't do it alone. The formal divorce papers arrived 3 days later. Weston signed them without contest, agreeing to Emma's terms completely. The SEC investigation continued, eventually resulting in charges that would effectively end his career in finance. He left Mapleridge before Christmas, reportedly relocating to Arizona to pursue other opportunities. Emma stayed with me through the holidays and into the new year, gradually reclaiming pieces of herself. She painted her old bedroom a vibrant teal that Weston would have hated. She reconnected with friends he had subtly pushed away. She laughed more freely, spoke more confidently, stood a little taller each day. By spring, she was ready to move, back into the house. Her house now, legally and emotionally. We spent a weekend reimagining the space, replacing Weston's heavy, masculine furniture with pieces that reflected Emma's lighter aesthetic. The master bedroom, once a site of control and criticism, became a peaceful retreat in soothing blues and greens. On her first night back, I brought dinner, her favorite lasagna from Giovanni's, and a small housewarming gift, a brass key holder for the entryway, engraved with the words, "This is your house. These are your keys. This is your life." Emma hung it by the door, running her fingers over the engraving. I never thought I'd feel safe here again. The house was never the problem, I reminded her. It was always beautiful, always full of potential. It just needed the right person to claim it. As I prepared to leave, Emma followed me onto the porch, wrapping her arms around me in a fierce hug. Thank you for fighting for me, even when I couldn't fight for myself. I held her close. This daughter of mine who had weathered such storms and emerged stronger for it. Always, sweetheart. That's what mothers do. The following November, as Thanksgiving approached once again, Emma called with an unexpected question. Would you mind if I hosted this year? I know it's always at your house, but I thought, maybe it's time for a new tradition. I smiled, hearing the confidence in her voice, the ownership of her life and choices. I think that's a wonderful idea. Great. I've already invited Olivia and Marcus and the kids. And I was thinking we could volunteer at the shelter in the morning before dinner. They always need extra hands on holidays. Count me in, I agreed, heart full at this glimpse of the Emma I'd always known was there. Generous, purposeful, undiminished. On Thanksgiving morning, as I pulled into Emma's driveway carrying my contribution, the cranberry relish that had been part of our family holidays for generations, I paused to take in the scene. Warm light spilled from every window of the house that had once been a battlefield. The front door stood open in welcome, Emma visible in the entryway, laughing with Olivia as they arranged a centerpiece of autumn flowers. This was victory. Not the legal maneuvers, not Weston's downfall, not even the reclaimed house. This moment, this joy, this woman who had walked through fire and emerged not just intact, but luminous. I gathered my dish and headed toward the open door, toward family, toward Thanksgiving in its purest form. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.